Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Let's Talk the Winchesters. With me, of course, as always, is Carla from Carla Astrology. Hi. And yeah, we're a little bit later than usual because of other appointments that we had. But yeah, so let's talk about episode 9. This one, oh my God, what was it called? I don't have the name written down. Shoot. Anyway, you didn't write that down either, did you? Shame. Anyway, so in this episode, we're going to deal with some vampires. So the first thing that we see is the vampires are staging an accident so that they can rob a money transport. But what they're really after is not money. They're actually going after this box that has the men of letters, like the Aquarian star, on it. And it turns out, from what one of the guys says, they're looking for an amulet, which is not in the box. Instead, what they find is like a stack of blueprints from what we later find out is the clubhouse. And that in the hands of the vampires, not a good thing. So, yeah, it turns out that clubhouse, from what we see from the outside, that old building, that is really not at all what's inside. Turns out there's multiple layers. It's not just that upstairs room that we've seen and that room where Ada does her witchcraft and the laboratory where they did the autopsy. There's so many more layers, and Lata is slowly going through everything, taking inventory, finding out what is where and what kind of treasures do they have hidden there. And honestly, I would love to go to one of those places and just look around. I'm sure some of those places actually exist in the world. I just wouldn't know where and probably wouldn't get access to it. But oh my God, that must be so interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, in the meantime, John and Mary are having their secret relationship because Mary decided not to tell the others because, work relationships and office romances, as she calls it can get messy. And in a life or death situation, she doesn't want to be thinking about that kind of stuff. She doesn't want the others to be worried. So she decided they're just going to have their secret morning dates and then pretend that they've been in different places and all that. And John, for now, just goes along with it. And on one of their morning dates, they run into Kyle, that reporter that Mary went out that one time, who was also investigating that veterans hospital. And yeah, so he catches them kissing, and Mary is really embarrassed, and she's like, oh, so we find out she's basically been ghosting that guy. She hasn't called back or anything. And so, yeah, well, we later find out that Kyle didn't take that in a really good way. So, yeah. Then when they are about to get into the car, Carlos, he is messaging through that, what do you call that, the radio thingy?
The CB?
Yeah.
CB.
Yeah, he's using one of those to contact Mary to let her know that they have a vampire case. Using words like something to sink our teeth into, which is code for vampire.
Yeah.
And April is here. Hi. Thanks for joining us. And so, yeah, she drives off and John goes back to the clubhouse to study the lore. Very Sam of him. And then Dean comes on and he says, or in his voiceover, we hear, "This isn't how I saw things going when I pushed over that first domino. Thing is, I've had more than a few dances with free will and fate, but as my dad used to say, fate is what you make it." And that's something we're going to talk about in a while, because that kind of gives us a little hint of what might be going on in this entire show. Okay, so at the crime scene, Carlos and Lata, they're already there. They're going to question the guard, the one that survived. The other one died. And so they find out what happened with the vampires, that they were after some kind of amulet and that they took something else with them. And of course, it couldn't be any more
Hmm.
coincidental. Betty, John's ex, who's a
Oh
cop,
yes.
she's also at the crime scene and she sees the gang. She sees Mary and Carlos and Lata. And of course, her spidey senses start to tingle and she knows something must be up. Of course, she
Hmm.
doesn't know why they're there. So
Yeah.
she suspects that they're up to no good. And she even goes so far as to go to Millie and talk to John's mom about Mary and that she's afraid he's running with the wrong crowd because Mary has quite a rap sheet, so does John, and she was hoping that now, after coming back from the war, he'd be a changed man. And she's afraid that he's going to go back into old habits, whatever that means. And so Millie assures her that she met them and she thinks everything's fine and she shouldn't worry about it. So, of course, Millie is covering for the gang because she knows what's going on. And yeah, then at the clubhouse, they find out in one of the locker rooms that they have down there. In one of the lockers, they actually find the amulet that the vampires were looking for, and it is called the Gem of the Ushatari, which are Romanian gods of fate. And of course, John is the one touching it, and he then has vision of his own death, that he is going to die because the vampire is going to bite him, and it's going to happen on a red carpet. So now everyone is looking out for, wherever they go, is there a red carpet? Is that going to be the place where he dies? So staying away from red carpets. And yeah, it turns out that the expert that they turned to, one of Lata's acquaintances, well, the vampires got to her first. So when they come there to investigate, the vampires are already there. They have a little bit of a fight. And the head of the vampire clan, he already knows that John is going to die because of him. And so, yeah, Mary is just getting super afraid for John, and they escape. And now they just have to be super careful. So they're benching John, making sure that he can't go anywhere. So Millie keeps him company in the bunker. They stay in the locker room. They go through all kinds of notes and books that they took with them from the store afterwards. And yeah, they also find out that apparently the vampires had blueprints for the bunker. And so they now know that there is an extra entrance that, or they can make an entrance, the vampires, because everything else is like warded against all kinds of supernatural beings. But if they come from underground, that is not secure. So Millie and John quickly escape into a vault that is down there. And as soon as the door is closed, what do they see? A red carpet. So that's the room where John is supposed to die. So he basically ran into the trap. And eventually the vampires get down there. The gang tries to fight them off as well as they can. And there is one of like my favorite scene in that episode is Carlos. He gets out of the van and he takes off his scarf and he's like, Lata. And I thought he was just going to hand her the scarf and be like, hold my beer kind of thing. But no, he bends over and Lata, she pours holy water all over his hair. And so his hair is completely wet.
Yeah.
And then he is doing something that I think Mary referred to as like the shampoo commercial kind of thing. So he's washing around his hair against the vampires, getting them wet with the holy water so that they are like paralyzed for a second from the shock, and then cutting off the heads. And, yeah, that one was so funny.
Great. Yeah, that was
that
great.
was so Carlos. I loved it. I want more of those moments.
I know, right?
I mean, there is some humor in all of these episodes, but I want
Mhm.
more because I remember the first, I don't know, 5 to 8 seasons or so of Supernatural. There was a lot more humor, only when it got to like a lot more like the darkness, Amara, and all that kind of stuff, and Mary coming back. A lot of the humor seemed to be gone or not that much anymore.
Mhm.
But like that show has always had, even if it was a dark humor or something, but those
Yes.
little moments in between, um, they are so precious, and I want more of that. And
Me
I love
too.
that Carlos did that.
I know.
It was awesome. So yeah, eventually they all get down to the bunker, the vampire guy first, and since that amulet, the expert said it shows the next fated moment in someone's destiny, something that must happen. So John knows that there is no way to escape what he saw in his vision. So he's coming up with a plan that, like, there's a wire sticking out in that vault, and he's basically telling his mom to electrocute him so that he's dead.
Right.
And that, like, moments before the vampire comes in, and then he's like dead on the ground, the light goes out, the vampire comes in, he's biting John in the neck, but what he doesn't realize is that John's dead, and that's like the poison for the vampires, dead men's blood.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden the vampire starts choking, and that gives Mary the opportunity to then come in, kill the vampire.
Mhm.
And yeah, but then they have to try to get John back to the land of the living. So they're trying a lot of CPR for a long time. And it seems like he's not coming back. But then at the very last moment, of course, dramatic effect, he comes back. And of course, Mary and John are kissing. And that was the second
Everybody's going,
greatest moment. That reaction from Carlos, like, I knew this. I knew
yeah.
I've been telling you. Kind of thing. Oh my God, yeah. So now it was out in the open. Everyone knew about. Of course, earlier when John tried to deny that Mary is his girlfriend towards his mom, and Millie was like, "Well, you can tell that the others, but I'm your mom. I mean, come on."
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, Millie is cool. I really, I always forget to research if there's any information out there on what happens to her. That is something I would be very interested in.
Yeah.
Because if John would lose his mom as well, that would kind of also explain why it's so easy for him to turn to the dark side and just
Mhm.
forget everything else and have that tunnel vision. So I'm wondering what happens to her and when. If she dies a natural death or a supernatural death. So yeah. And then the last thing that we see in that episode is that the reporter Kyle and
Mhm.
Betty are meeting up at a cafe or at a diner. And turns out that Kyle has been putting together quite a lot of information on the gang. He has files on all of them, and he's sharing that information with Betty. And from now on, they're going to investigate them. But then we see at the back of his neck, he's got those 3 magic dots. So he is the Akrita got to him, so he's working for them.
Yep.
And yeah, that was this episode. Sadly, there were no characters from Supernatural making an appearance. So, what did you think of the episode?
Um, I liked it. It was like you said, very makes you think what's going on. What is it all about? Especially what you
Hmm.
were talking about with what Dean said, because I didn't
Yeah,
remember, but it makes sense that
let's look at that again. So he said, when I pushed over that first domino. So we've been theorizing
Mhm.
about like what could happen. So hearing that, what do you think?
He's messing with the timeline. He's absolutely messing with the timeline. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe not, but I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I think so too. I'm leaning towards that as well. Like in the beginning, one of our theories was that it might be a parallel universe, which could still
Right?
be true. He could be another Dean doing that in a parallel world. And then he also said, I've had more than a few dances with free will and fate,
Mhm.
which, like, we've always been speculating about the timeline of when this is, like, when Dean actually did this, when he is writing that journal, and as we now know, traveled back in time to give his dad the letter from his grandpa, Henry. And yeah, when he says a few dances with free will, for me, best guess is the apocalypse happened for him, and maybe even the whole Chuck thing already as well. And I don't know if this is between when Chuck was defeated and before he dies, like if Dean was still human when that happened, or if this is actually him from the other side coming back. So I'm kind of torn with that because in the very last episode, after Dean's death, he came to heaven, he met Bobby, he got into Baby, driving around, and then Sam was already there. So not much time had passed there. So I'm wondering, like, what's the time frame of this? But I'm thinking that it's pretty close towards the end of his life that he would be doing this.
Right. Right. I'm wondering too. I mean, they showed that amulet, and in that with that amulet, whoever touched it and whoever was affected could see that outcome.
Hmm.
Maybe he got his hands on that at one point,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah.
maybe when he decided, oh, I need to do
The
something there.
question that's also interesting is what would be Dean's end game? What's his motivation?
Yeah. Yeah, I drew a card on that. Well, trying to find out the motive. And that's the Page of Bones, which is the Page of Wands. And like you had noticed, you asked me who that
Claire.
was, and that's
Claire
Claire
Novak.
Novak. Hmm.
Yeah, so that's Castiel's daughter. Um, well, Jimmy Novak's daughter. Castiel is just wearing the Jimmy suit.
Right.
Um, and that to me kind of like Claire and Dean are very much alike in the way that they view family. And Claire was always extremely upset at Jimmy for leaving the family to serve some higher cause. Because why couldn't his family be the higher cause? Why did he have to go out and pray to the angels and be like, yeah, use me and do whatever? Why was the family not enough? And I get that kind of similar thing from Dean as well. Like, why did his dad have to abandon the two boys to just take revenge on the mom? Yeah, revenge is all good and well and all that, but he completely neglected his children, the one thing that he had left from his wife.
Yeah.
And instead of honoring the mother's life by raising the children, he was completely forgetting about the children and subjecting them to this kind of world and lifestyle that Mary never wanted for the kids.
Right.
So I can go along with that theory or idea that Dean might want to rewrite history
Hmm.
so that his father knows about the hunting thing very early on, like right when he met their mother, so that they can do this together, leave the hunting life together, and then have the family without the mother dying, maybe even preventing the demon deal with Yellow Eyes. That would be my idea, and that would
Yeah.
be what makes sense from Dean's perspective because he always wanted that family life. He never really got it.
Yeah. And
And
with the Page of Wands, that's that jumping in without thinking of the consequences.
mm-hmm,
So it's just, you know,
yeah.
mm,
So who
fate has
knows?
a funny way
Maybe,
of still gonna happen. Things are just in a different way.
yeah, yeah. So this is, I mean, the fact that he showed up on the photography would then mean in conclusion that he has to exist at some
Yes.
point. So
Right.
Sam and Dean will still be born, or at least Dean will be
Yeah.
born.
Yep. Yep.
And since the apocalypse was supposed to happen, Sam would be there as well 4 years later. But then the question is, would the apocalypse and everything that we have seen still happen? Or are the Akrita, the big bad wolf, once they're defeated, everything is good? Or could the whole family stand together during the apocalypse? Would the parents say, no, if you're not getting into hunting, none of this is ever going to happen. They're never going to find out about Lilith. They're never going to break the seal. Sam's never going to get in touch with Ruby. He's not going to drink the blood and have demon powers. They're never going to meet Crowley.
Right.
Or Castiel. And yeah. Who knows? Maybe John would never even meet Bobby. I don't know when he came into the story at all. If they had known Bobby before Sam and Dean were born. I don't really know how long they've known each other. I just know that I think, I don't know. I would have to go back and see if they ever mentioned that in the show when they met. Because I know that Bobby took care of the boys sometimes when John was out hunting, and that John was a source of information like Lata was for the gang when it comes to like pointing him in the right direction and doing research. So, but yeah, it's like this is episode 9, so 10, 11, 12, 4 episodes left.
Yeah.
Still no word on whether it's being picked up or not. So,
I'm pretty sure that I think we're right about the timeline thing, because I think that the CW kind of has done that with anything with, granted, I know Supernatural isn't part of the DC universe, but they've done that. You know what I mean? And I've seen a lot of DC stuff on the CW. I don't know if it's still on there, but
yeah, some.
Interesting. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a way to make all those multiple timelines, and that's how they keep that storyline going. Because I remember seeing an interview with the boys, Jensen and what's Sam's real name? Jarrett, yeah. And they were talking about another season of Supernatural. So there would have to be a reason to go back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Change something to continue. Who knows?
Or maybe even just a mini series or something like what happens in heaven.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like this would be interesting.
Jack is like God now, right?
Yeah. But he is, unlike Chuck, very hands off. He really lets the people do whatever they want. Like he is really living the whole free will idea.
Right.
Whereas Chuck, he had written the stories. He was like even posing as a prophet to put himself in the story and to meet his favorite characters and all of that. But I mean, for Chuck, that didn't end well. Don't they always say you should never meet your heroes? Didn't he turn Sam and Dean into his heroes?
Yes.
He shouldn't have met them.
Nope. But that could be, maybe they're trying to show what it's like if you have too much free will.
Who knows? Well, I mean, the energy will always find a way to balance things out. So, and as sad as it sounds, but I think Utopia with just everything being good, it's a nice idea on paper, but it would never work because we can only recognize the good if we have the bad to go along with it.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so bad will always happen. Evil will always be there. It's just the question of how to deal with it.
Yeah. Yep. It's crazy how that stuff makes you think about all this stuff.
Yeah, it sometimes puts life in perspective.
Absolutely.
But that's the good thing about these shows, that they are more than just like a little bit of fantasy that we can get lost in. We can actually take something away for our own lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in episode 10. I just, I know that at least in episode 12, someone's coming back, and in episode 13, probably too. I think Samuel will eventually make an appearance again because they said that he is currently with Ada, which we also haven't seen in a while. and at least
Yeah.
2 episodes now, 2 or 3
Yeah.
episodes. I think the last time we saw her was with her son. Was that the last time we saw her? Or maybe the episode after. But yeah, we haven't seen her in a while.
Mm-mm.
So wonder what she's up to. I know that they're researching some Akrita stuff regarding the queen.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think it's also nice that they're kind of falling into this whole thing that Supernatural did with like the monster of the week instead of
Yes.
just only focusing on the
Right.
Akrita.
Me too.
And so like the big bad wolf is always in the back, just like it was with every single season
Yeah.
for the boys. While
Mm-hmm.
they were going after that one main antagonist, they were still doing their job along the way. And I like that they are continuing with that.
I do too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And also something that I noticed, like I haven't been a fan of Mary for a very long time, but I have to say in this episode, like when she was smiling and happy and all romantic and stuff, I actually saw a little bit of chemistry between them. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, I can see this.
Yeah.
And then I looked at her and I was like, wait a minute. But in the first episode, in the pilot, she had much longer hair, like almost twice as long, and her hair was straight. But since episode 2, her
Oh.
hair was this short and kind of curly stuff, looking more 70s like. So ever since episode 2, they've been trying to style her more like the other actress that used to play Mary in Supernatural. So yeah, I'm
That's
wondering why they
interesting.
didn't do that in the pilot right away. Like in the pilot, she looked kind of 90s, not
Yeah.
70s.
That's really interesting that you noticed that stuff. I'm just like, yeah, this is a good show.
Pay attention to the details. Well, that's I think like my job at like working at an opera house, seeing like costumes and everything. So if something's not matching up with the time period that they put it in, people will notice.
Yeah. You're like, did you see that? I'm like, see what? See what?
It's that.
Yeah.
Didn't you see?
Yeah.
The hair. It was all wrong. It was the hair.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's awesome.
all right. Well, we can only be surprised for what happens next. And we'll see if any of our theories turn out to be true.
Yeah.
And yeah, if any of you have any theories of what's going to happen and how Dean is pushing over dominoes and why, let us know in the comments. And yeah, we'll see you again next time. Until then, take care. Bye.
Bye.